Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Budding Watch Enthusiast. So if you guys are longtime fans of this channel, Tsao Baltimore is going to be a brand that you are familiar with. Of course, the Tsao Baltimore Founders Edition is the first mechanical watch that I ever owned. It's a big reason why I'm doing this channel and why I'm talking to you guys today. It's a watch that I reviewed before on the channel, as well as did even like a follow-up, I think 6 months later, a year later review on it as well. But today we are checking out the second watch from Tsao Baltimore, the recently released Torsk Diver that has been out there in the wild now for a couple of months. My wife backed it on Kickstarter, got hers in about 2 months ago, I guess at this point. Finally was able to wrangle it away from her. So now we're finally able to check it out for a review. So let's start by taking a look at the specs of this watch. Of course, the case is going to be 316L brushed stainless steel. You have this barrel style mid case, which kind of harkens back to the original Tsao Baltimore design as well. You have these overlapping lugs, again, a feature that was present on the Founders Edition too, that have these very short but also very wide beveled edges that come down the side of the lugs, much more broad once you get down to the bottom of the lug than where it starts at the top. Now, of course, the crown here is a screw-down crown that you see actually at the 2 o'clock position, and you have this like fin-like crown guard that kind of runs the length of the case. Obviously, a style taking some inspiration from the Bremont Supermarine that's out there, and also same kind of deal with the barreled case too. And the crown does have a loomed Tsao Baltimore T on it as well. You can even kind of see the luminescence paint in there, even without the lights being turned out. If we flip it over, you see we do have a screw down exhibition case back that nicely displays the custom rotor that is inspired by the Torsk submarine. And you also see that Torsk inspiration on this little plate that's on the side here as well. The SS-423 is the Torsk submarine's designation. Or actually, I guess Torsk would be the designation. This is the sub's number. And the crystal on top of this watch is a double-domed AR-coated sapphire crystal. This whole package gives you a 300-meter water resistance. If we're looking at the watch's dimensions, you have a width of 43 millimeters, a lug-to-lug length of 49 millimeters, a height of 13.5 millimeters, and a strap width of 22 millimeters. So for the Torsk Diver, there's 2 bezel options that are available. This one here, of course, dome sapphire. You can see a really prominent curvature there, like if you turn the watch to the profile. The markers on the bezel are loomed as well. It's 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. The other option that you can get for this Torsk Diver is going to be a domed stainless steel bezel. Now, no matter which colorway you go with, you're going to get a dial that has a really brilliant sunburst effect on it. And I think that effect is even more accentuated with this Camden orange colorway that my wife opted for when picking out this watch. Of course, you see the Tsao Baltimore logo and branding there at 12 o'clock, and then the Torsk Diver logo and branding at 6 o'clock, resting above the cutout date window. And if you also look on the outer part of the dial, you get kind of a recessed minute track chapter ring that runs along the outer part of the dial. You do see numerals there at every 5 minutes. The indices on the watch are applied steel. Of course, you see the double markers there at 12, 3, and 9 o'clock, and then a shortened marker at 6 o'clock to make room for that date wheel cutout. And the sort of alpha-styled hour and minute hands are complemented by an Aerotip second hand. Now, one thing that I had a question about with this watch is why the luminescence on the hands is a different color than that of the markers. And that's actually not the case. I actually talked to Alan, the designer from Tsao Baltimore, about this. The issue is that since the lume is obviously translucent and there's no backing on the bottom of the hands, what you're actually seeing is a little bit of that orange dial creeping through the hands. That's not really an issue or something that would be prevalent on anything but the orange colorway of the watch, but something worth noting. The movement powering this watch is a Miyota 9015. That means you are getting a 48-hour power reserve. It beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour, so you get that nice, smooth sweep of the seconds hand. It has hacking, it has hand wind, and it has a quick set date. So the bracelet is going to be this steel link bracelet. Now, I don't know what style the links are. It's definitely one that I personally have never seen before, and I couldn't find online another watch that had this style links, though I'm sure there's at least another one out there. They're fully brushed, and you have something that you're seeing more and more watch companies do with their bracelets, and if we look in the bottom, you do see those quick change pins, so you can pop this bracelet off and on very easily. So if you're someone that likes to change straps pretty frequently, that's going to be super helpful. The double push button clasp here does have the Tsao Baltimore logo branded on it. It also does have the ratcheting micro adjustment, so you can pull the clasp out and then adjust it to your specific wrist needs, which is always a great feature to see. And you can also pick up the Torsk Diver on a rubber strap if you want to, but being as there is no difference in price, it costs the same whether you get it on rubber or on bracelet, I would definitely say to opt for the bracelet. That's usually a better value. Obviously, the exception to that is if you're picking up one of the bronze options that they have, you're going to want that on a rubber strap. Actually, I think that has only come on a rubber strap. And then here's what the Tsao Baltimore Torsk Diver looks like on my 8-inch wrist. Of course, for me, this watch being a little bit bigger, it's not going to be a problem. For you smaller wristed folks out there, as long as you don't mind the height of the watch, this will work out okay. The lug-to-lug distance being kept under 50 millimeters makes this watch a little bit more accessible. So dive watches for me sort of fall into one of two extremely broad categories. You have your very chunky tool divers. Think kind of like your Omega Seamaster Professionals for that. Think of like the Ocean Crawler Core Diver that I reviewed earlier this year for something like that. And then you have what I call kind of dress divers that are a little bit more conservative in their size and their scale, that are a little bit more neutral so that you can wear them both in business and casual settings. That's kind of like your Rolex Submariner. I think the NTH Nakin certainly falls in that line. A lot of the Christopher Ward C65 watches fall in that line. The Tsao Baltimore Torsk Diver kind of straddles the two. It's definitely a bulky, very bold tool style watch, but that sunburst style and that kind of reserved, especially if you go with the sapphire bezel option, kind of give it a sort of classy enough look that you might, I stress might, be able to get away with wearing this in a bit of a business setting. The more bold among us would have to try that out. But I definitely think the Torsk Diver does a good job of kind of fitting into both worlds, if that makes sense. Usually with kind of tool divers, you see a little bit more playfulness in their design, in their colors, and in just the way the watch looks. And I think that the Tsao Baltimore Torsk Diver kind of keeps an air of seriousness. I think the sapphire bezel also suits the watch really well. It's a fantastic choice, and the bezel itself, whether you get the sapphire or the steel, is pretty much what gives the watch its kind of rounded dimension on top. A lot of dive watches would have relied on the crystal for that, and even some divers would have taken this, dome sapphire bezel and still had a really steep dome crystal to kind of make the crystal an extension of that. I do appreciate that Tsao Baltimore kept the crystal a little bit restrained. Certainly not a flat crystal, but having the bezel be the top point of height on the watch, I think was the right design choice. Now, that being said, though, because the height of the watch is coming from the mid case and it is coming from the bezel, and of course, you guys saw when I did the wrist roll that just because the watch just sits up on your wrist, so it does wear a little bit taller than its 13.5 millimeter height suggests, which is funny because the Founders Edition that I showed you guys before is technically a taller watch, but because a lot of that height comes from the steep dome on the crystal that comes with it, it doesn't feel like it wears as tall. Now, of course, the case is super thick, super chunky. I know there's some folks out there that really don't like this bulky, this chunky of a case. Some of you guys do. Obviously, your mileage is going to vary there. Now, for me, the biggest miss on the Torsk Diver is easily going to be the metal bracelet that it comes with. So the first thing that I'm not a huge fan of is the lack of contrast in finishing. So you do see these like little grooves that the bracelet does have running down the middle. You also see it on the edge of the links. I think that would have been a perfect place to maybe put a polished finish on there. Again, I don't know what that would have added in terms of cost or if that was even a possibility, but the bracelet finishing just seems kind of flat. And again, I'm not a huge fan of the link style either. The other big issue that I have with it is you guys can see here that the bracelet just goes, it's going to be the same width. It's that 22 millimeter width all the way around the watch. There's no taper whatsoever. Now, to be completely fair, this might be a necessary evil. You might need a bit of a bulkier bracelet because the watch head is pretty big and pretty heavy. So having the larger bracelet, having the extended clasp on the bottom may balance that out a little bit. So I understand why it was done. If it was done for that reason, I will definitely say that I much preferred spending time with this watch on a NATO strap as opposed to the bracelet. And I will warn you that if you are a desk diver, because this clasp is so big, and if you have other watches that has this clasp style, because there's certainly other ones out there where you see it, this is a scratch magnet. My wife has only had this for, like I said, not even a couple months at this point. She works at a desk, and it's kind of, the camera's not picking up very well, but there's scratches aplenty on the clasp. So again, it's just something that bears mentioning. If you are a desk diver, it will pick them up quite prominently. So the price of the Torsk Diver is $650. You can get it directly from the Tsao Baltimore website. And as a little bit of added value, much like the Founders Edition, the Torsk Diver does come with a watch winder. That's essentially the box that it comes in. It's actually a bit of an improved design over the one that was sent out with the Founders Edition. So you get a little bit of added value there with the watch as well. So all in all, I think this is a really great watch, a great second offering from Tsao Baltimore, even if it didn't suit me as much as I thought it might when I first got to see the watch. I think that my tastes have definitely gone more in the direction of the dressy divers, more in the direction of the more conservatively sized divers like your NTH Nakins and Christopher Ward C65s. But the watch is very solidly built. I do really dig the design of the dial. Another 6 o'clock date window, which I always appreciate as well. I wish more companies would do that more often. And most importantly, my wife, who's the actual owner of this watch, and also a lover of very large dive watches, if you saw the video that I did of her state of the collection last year, she loves it. So if you're one to like the bigger tool divers out there as opposed to the so-called dress divers, I think that the Torsk Diver is certainly an excellent option and one that you should consider checking out. So guys, that is going to do it for my review of the Tsao Baltimore Torsk Diver. If you guys liked the video, hit the thumb button down below. If you loved it, click the red subscribe button and ring the bell icon. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you the next time.